From an industry perspective and from a university perspective, and the challenge, it's the same. It is ultimately each structure of each university. Everyone has it in a different format. Some universities have more of a central structural roles, and some are more foundational, and it's more led by the research groups themselves. But it's never easy to navigate that necessarily.
Hello and welcome to the Strategic Partnerships podcast series. My name is Madeline Arkins. I'm a research project officer at UIN and your host for today. In this week's episode, we delve into the strategies shaping the future of gaming and technology with Lucy Hattersley, Academic Development Manager at Sony Interactive Entertainment. Lucy shares how Sony collaborates with universities to push the boundaries of research and innovation, and will also touch on what to expect from the upcoming UIN Forum in London on November 7th. Today, we'll be exploring in part how strategic academic partnerships are driving technological innovation, and we'll also touch on some key themes that will be coming up in the upcoming UIN Forum, evaluating the impact of partnerships that is happening on November 7th in London. This is an in-person event that will be really essential to anyone who's interested in looking to deepen their understanding of building and measuring impactful collaborations between industry and academia. And it is very generously hosted by our friends at Sony Interactive Entertainment, with speakers from our own UIN, UCL, Matter Focus, as well as Lucy Hattersley. Lucy is Academic Development Manager at Sony Interactive Entertainment and Manager of their academic research program in the UK, Europe, Australia, and New Zealand. In her role, she develops and manages these relationships with the academic community, forging connections with institutions and laboratories alike to foster cutting-edge innovation and research for PlayStation. And prior to this, she also held roles in enterprise at the University of Greenwich and in publishing. So Lucy, thank you so much for joining us today. I think we've got a really interesting session lined up.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to talk to you all.
Great. Lucy, just to get us started, you have a really fascinating role at Sony, and I'm going to give a brief overview in my introduction, but maybe you could start by telling us a little bit more about your role and how your journey led you to manage academic partnerships.
Yeah, sure. I've actually been in my role for 2 years, and I currently synergize to a strategy in the Future Technologies Group, which is a business unit part of Sony Interactive Entertainment. What I synergize to particularly is that there's three foundational research themes that we're trying to accelerate and deliver, which is looking at what the future of gaming looks like in the next 7 to 10 years based on a SDK platform engineering element. So my role synergizes well to that. And what I do is I work with those foundational role themes to then synergize with universities to look at what similar things that they might be focusing on or having academic strengths within. And we try and create relationships or information and knowledge share between those institutions to help us understand each other better and ideally create projects that we can work together on a research level. So yeah, I get to meet lots of different universities from all over the place and learn a lot about them. And it's a really interesting role which synergizes from my background at the University of Greenwich.
And 7 to 10 years is such a much longer time perspective than you would expect for industry, I would say. I feel like we always talk about in the work between university and industry that it's always industry that are a little bit more faster and iterative. So it's interesting to hear that you guys have really that more long-term perspective, perhaps.
Yeah, it's very unique, especially I think it's quite unique in the gaming industry. We've always had sort of a shorter term goals because it's been shorter term and mainly a different focus. But because we've got these three different foundational things that's looking at how the landscape's developing and what technologies are online and available now and what possible applications there might be in different formats, that's one thing that we're aware of and that we want to make sure that we've got that ability to foresee that and looking at what can be developed and what it would look like in the future, hence the Future Technologies Group. So.
Hence the name. So considering this kind of forward-looking element, how do you view academic partnerships contributing to shaping this future of gaming and more broadly technology at Sony?
We only see it strengthening it, to be honest. There was so much that we learn from reading anything from in the academic world, from academic papers to conferences throughout the Sony group. Obviously, we're a business unit within Sony Interactive, but the group of Sony is huge itself, and we all work in different ways. But for our group, We learn a lot from academic papers. We've got quite a mix of engineer profiles from learning on the job to right up to PhD. So we've got this really nice mixing pot internally, and it starts lots of discussions. But there's a lot of interest and excitement when it comes to academia of how the different ways that can be applied. So to bring those theories and apply them in sort of research experiments together, it's really exciting for us. We definitely see it being as a huge asset, and hence the reason we're so keen to invest in these relationships.
Yeah, and as I mentioned earlier at the opening, which is why we're so glad to have Sony as a partner in the upcoming UIN forum in London, and also to get that industry perspective, because UIN is, for the most part, I would say, a network of universities, and to really hear the other side of the tale from industry perspective is always really valuable. Going back to the Future Technology Group, I had the pleasure of also interviewing you 2 years back now at our conference in Budapest. And you told me how the Future Technology Group alone operates across the UK, San Mateo, and Tokyo, which, this is such a diversity of places and individuals. How do you align and manage academic partnerships globally in such a massive company as Sony to ensure that they fit within Sony's strategic goals? How do you make peace with those two truths?
Yeah, I mean, obviously those 3 different territories are quite different, especially from an academic landscape. And I have 2 colleagues, myself and 2 others, that operate in those areas as well. And that's purely because obviously how things are administratively put together. So contracts work slightly different across those territories. So we find it better to have an expert on the ground, so to speak, in those territories. But we do work very closely together. We have projects that scope across the 3 territories that work really well. The way that we deliver things within project-based environments, it works well that it doesn't matter if you're not always online, you can catch up, or work can be done remotely and then caught up. But there's always a synergy, there's always a touch point. And we've found that it's really important to make sure there's an anchor on the ground in whichever territory that academic institution's based, as well as having expertise across perhaps another couple of sites. But having that collaboration also brings us together as a team, as well as hopefully giving academia and universities a good experience of us, that doesn't really matter where we are in the world, we will working to one research theme.
Yeah, and I think that stands for so many people in a post-COVID world, that having people on the ground is important, but if there is synergy in the end goal, then you can really work anywhere. On the topic of collaboration and successful ones, are there any examples that you could share of these kind of innovative research or projects that you do either within the Future Technologies Group or Sony more generally that have emerged from your collaborations with universities?
I mean, we have a lot of engineers that join the family through this journey. I can think of one particular one. We had a fantastic opportunity with the University of York and a Centre of Doctoral Training. And we had Adrian, who came through us through a audio project, because York is very strong in audio, and he completed his project with us for his PhD. And during that placement, we obviously got a real nice feeling for each other in terms of what his capabilities were, what he could learn, what he brought to the table, and how we could look at applying it. And he fantastically finished his PhD, did really well, and then wanted to come back. So we found him a really cool audio role, and that's actually with the Future Technologies Group as well. So he's within our team. And what's really lovely is we've still got a strong contact with the University of York. He has connections to that Centre of Doctoral Training, and now he gets involved with projects and placements from students that are going through that journey. So it's a really nice continuity of what's happening. And Adrian has a real good strength in the audio areas. So we've really watched him grow and become part of our team, which has been lovely.
Such a vote of confidence also for someone to have that long-term journey with you guys and then still come back. Still come back and say, no, this is still of value. Yeah. Maybe speaking about the challenges, because we always love to hear the nitty-gritty of everything. And also having been on both sides of the arrangement in terms of your experience in academia and now at Sony, what sort of challenges generally do you guys face when initiating partnerships from an industry perspective?
From an industry perspective and from a university perspective, it's the same. And I empathise at all the conferences and stuff when we mention it, but it is ultimately each structure of each university. It's trying to sort of lift the hood on who goes where and who sits with what. Everyone has it in a different format. Some universities have more of a central structural role, so you go to innovation offices or knowledge exchange offices, and some are more foundational and it's more led by the research groups themselves. But it's never easy to navigate that necessarily. I'm just trying to figure out who does what. I'm just one person doing this role, so having to go through that and then find somebody and then find someone that's interested in keeping that momentum, it can be quite hard work. And I think from both sides, and we're aware of it as well, university has a lot of departments, and trying to navigate, for example, even just an NDA, it can take a very long time. And we're quite heavily formatted as well, so we have certain levels. So sometimes when you find this perfect project and the unicorn sparkles happen and it's great, you can't talk about it too much until this NDA is gone and we've lost a month, 2 months, 3 months, people go on holiday, change, understaffing. And that can be quite frustrating at times because the industry that Sony is in we're moving quite quickly, so things change quickly. But I think everyone, industry and academia, are very aware of it, and we're trying to work on it.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that the challenges are the same on either side, because I think sometimes we hear conversations and akin to, oh no, the two parties are so vastly different that ergo they have vastly different problems in dealing with each other. But yeah, one thing you meant, the legal team certainly do get a lot of flack on both sides in terms of the bureaucracy and length of administration. So that's certainly a shared challenge, one might say.
It's also really important as well. I'm not joking about it, but it is very important to make sure, especially something like an NDA, it has to be foundational. And then I usually work on a mutual NDA. So then once it's done, we don't have to worry about it again, but it's just taking that time to do it properly. It's really important.
This just came to mind now. You and I are doing a lot of work on deep tech at the minute. And one problem in deep tech that arises is because the technology is so quickly evolving that sometimes the actual advancements make you a little bit more disconnected from the original problem once you're like working out these technological solutions. How do you guys ensure that these academic collaborations maybe remain relevant and aligned with the emerging trends, understanding that maybe with things like NDAs and other administration procedures that it can take a little bit longer?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very good point, and we do try and future-proof things, but obviously certain things are just accelerating at a vast speed at the moment that no one really has a handle on it. We're trying to keep the focus on, I know it's always IP that we're focusing on and who owns what if that happens. That's usually the main focus. And that's quite future-proof in the fact that whatever we work on, it'll always be foundational to those developments. But I think that's pretty standard across any sector, to be honest. But yeah, I don't know what the future holds. So we just hope that we have covered everything. And in certain ways, we have to be reactive in some of those things as things develop. But it's a good problem to have, I think.
It is. And we didn't invite you here for your prophecy abilities, though if you did have that power, Lucy, that would be very impressive. Obviously, the focus of the upcoming forum is all about partnerships and evaluating impact, which is something that oftentimes is deemed very elusive, difficult to measure, difficult to track over time. What metrics or indicators do you use or would you advocate for in order to assess the success or impact of academic partnerships? This is both in terms of innovation or indeed broader contributions.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big thing for us because we do have a metrics in-house at the moment that we're looking at, and we've developed it more to also keep track on things because, as you just mentioned previously, as things move, things might need to pivot. So we're looking at what we're getting from our collaboration on both sides, and we obviously listen to the academic side as well as our side. And we're looking at those deliverables. For example, one may be, oh, have we done a conference paper? We're fully aware that I think it's 12 weeks, I think we set a standard for. Every 12 weeks we review to make sure we're on track. We're fully aware that not every 12 weeks we're going to have a conference paper, but A1 over X amount of years would be fantastic. But is that a real sort of gauge on there? But it's something that we're looking at. So, for example, we have to go to a finance team as well as a research board. So the finance team are literally looking at what you've spent your money on, what have you delivered? And it's hard to look at that. Whereas I know that we might have done 10 projects with students, we've accelerated some other things, we've sent some people off to do talks. These are all impactful things, but not necessarily what a finance board are looking at. But so it's looking at that gauge to see, are we looking at the right thing? Is that fair? From my university background, I'm aware of the REF and the KEF in the UK, for example, and I know the REF can be deemed very difficult if you're not research focused, and the KEF can be difficult because it's so many things all at once. So it's just trying to see where we're really looking to see what other people are doing, what the thought patterns are, and assessing selfishly, what are we doing the right thing, and is there something that have we missed? And it's more of a discussion point. But yeah, I'm excited to see what the forum can bring out and what the workshops might help investigate, just to see what the senses are of whether, how do you measure research, and what is the ROI on it? I think it's really interesting.
From Sony's perspective, how do these academic
what you
partnerships play a
mentioned,
role
I
in
was
maybe
identifying
is it fair further developing future talent for Sony, and what's your approach to that?
I can only talk from a business unit level. I am involved in the Sony-wide, in, for example, PlayStation has a fantastic internship program in the US. It's very robust. It's been in existence for a long time. We don't have that in UK and Europe, but it is something that I'm part of a working group on, and it's something that we are interested in looking at. There's a few sort of things to consider there, like with remote working, for example, and how that would impact on having an internship and whether you would have that day-to-day contact in the office. It's these sort of things that we're discussing at the moment. But I mean, from our Future Technologies Group impact, we definitely do placements. We have spaces for sort of ad hoc internships, but they're built on each project and whether there's an anchor team to support that. But we've always had a really good experience of those. I mentioned Adrienne, who's part of our team now, but we also have a few people that have come to us through internship programs that are bespoke and then have joined the team. So we're really supportive of it. How we scale that up or create an actual process for it is something that we're working on. But I think from the last UIN group meeting that we had, it was really interesting to hear about how other companies are doing it and how it is important for that talent pipeline. We're all very aware of it. Just from our point of view in the Future Technologies Group, there's not a process officially yet, but we were definitely aware of the importance of it.
Yeah, from that last business roundtable meeting group we had, that was also a very interesting point to see the different processes that each industry use, and maybe why one is more suitable for one sector and then totally unsuitable for another, in terms of the kind of effort that is needed to nurture talent from, and sometimes pre-college, sometimes in late high school years, and whether it is suitable for the cadence of that sector. Thanks, Lucy. One question, and you brought this up earlier in one of your earlier answers, was the concept of something being mutually beneficial. How do you ensure that partnerships can be mutually beneficial for the academics, institutions involved, particularly when we think about balancing corporate goals with academic freedom, or indeed institutions' goals and the kind of freedom that sometimes is more available in the corporate world? How do you make that balancing act?
It's a really good question, and I think whenever you foundationally set anything up, myself or my colleagues, we always make sure we've got the right team to do that, and that will take usually quite a long time to set up, with lots of calls or meetings between research groups, academics, and our teams to make sure that we're talking the same language in research world. Very much like we are involved in the process through the whole collaboration, so we make sure that we have got check-ins and things are going well. It's not, oh, we've signed this, you guys got to go off and deliver it. It's always making sure it's relevant, whether we go into talk in universities about it or whether we have academics come to us and talk about it internally and just share our developments and our successes. And it's just making sure everyone keeps that energy and that passion is going, and it's just pure basic effort from both sides, and you've got the right people to do the right thing.
Yeah, the same language is really such a foundational element, but one that I think is often overlooked because it can become such an echo chamber of using your own jargon that one person's interpretation of one word can differ vastly from the other partners.
that's one of the hardest things that we experience as well. So I will take engineers to meet really fantastic researchers, and sometimes we're just not talking the right language. And everyone's very clever, and the researchers are telling us all the amazing things they've done, and we're saying, oh, these are all the amazing things that we've done, but we haven't got the answers. We're probably not answering the right questions. So it's where everyone's there, the recipe's there, but nothing goes. So it takes a while for that to come through. So yeah, it's a part of my job that I actually really like, and it's also the most challenging. So,
No, leading people along the journey. Yeah, you can
yeah, I'm not an
horse to
expert.
water, etc.
Yeah.
Maybe one of our last questions, just keeping mindful of your own time, Lucy. So you mentioned advising engineers on how to speak the same language. Maybe on the flip side of that coin, based on your experience, what advice would you give to academics who are looking to engage with industry partners like Sony, and particularly in terms of something a little bit more long-term, more strategic partnership?
I think being as succinct as possible in certain ways. For example, if you have a technology that you've been using for something else and you have an idea that you think, oh, this might work for PlayStation in this, just pitching it in that sense, so you could then just see, that's what we're trying to understand, or that's where they think that this might be applied. Sometimes it's hard, again, when you get everybody together and you're like, oh, so what would this technology look like in a part of our kit, or what would that look like for you, or those questions are really hard. So sometimes if you've got not a solution, but a starting point of an application, that's really helpful.
I like that. It's not a solution, but a starting point. The wise words. Maybe also on that, as we're preparing for the upcoming forum, are there any hopes you have in terms of what attendees will gain, especially in optimizing the success of the partnerships?
I'm a big fan of the power of the network. So I know that when we get UIM members together, it's very powerful, and it's always put together in a way that we can think about things in a different way and challenge ourselves. So I'm hoping that we can all come with something in mind, and then that be challenged, and we can have a really good debate and discussions about the best way to move forward with this. And we're using it as like a learning curve, because we're quite new to this, and whether we're doing a metrics thing or whether we need to think about something else would be really interesting. But to have that experience and ideas in a room is always the best way to look at it, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure very fruitful discussions will come from it, and I hope we get to see some of the audience there. Lucy, I feel like that's all that we have time for today, but thank you so much. There's obviously much more to say on such an intricate topic such as partnerships, but I think we got a good overview of what Sony do, and hopefully those who are interested in learning more will come to the forum on November 7th. And if you have any questions, please reach out to us at office@uin.org. That's all from me, I believe. Thank you so much for joining.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me, and thanks everyone for listening. So hopefully we'll see some people soon.
Enjoy the rest of your day, everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the discussion. Follow UIN on LinkedIn, and if you're enjoying our podcasts, make sure to subscribe, rate, and review on your podcast platform of choice to help others find this content too.